So here we are, we've spent a day in the saltwater with our boat. It's important now to wash all of the salt from the exterior of the boat and the exterior of the engine, but more importantly what we need to do is flush the cooling system. And the reason we flush the cooling system is that modern day outboard engines and outboard engines in general draw water from the lake, from the sea, and circulate that water around the power head through the cooling chambers and use that water to cool down the engine. So it's important now that we've stopped the boat to wash out that salt water, because over time that salt could crystallize and could start blocking the cooling system passages. The way in which we do that, and I'll just put this hose down, is we use a flushing attachment, and this is called a set of earmuffs or rabbit ears, and we grab this flushing attachment and we put the flushing attachment over the inlet at the bottom of the engine, at the bottom of the outboard case here. So we put this over, make sure that it's nice and secure and that it fits completely over the engine water intake at the bottom here. We'll then grab our hose. Now this hose is pressurized, so I'll just kink it over quickly. We'll grab our hose, attach the hose to the flushing attachment and make sure that we're getting clean water flow over that inlet. So now we're ready to flush our outboard. We have water to the engine. I'd hop in the boat normally and kick the engine over, but I'll get my trusty assistant to give the engine a quick start. So now the engine's running. It's important to ensure that there is water flow from the engine, and we do that by looking at this telltale, which indicates that water is now streaming through the cooling system. This is fresh water, and it is now flushing our engine. Normally flush the engine for 10-15 minutes, maybe a bit longer. You have to ensure that the thermostat fully opens, the engine gets to operating temperature, so that the maximum water flow is circulating through that cooling system, circulating through all of those little passages and chambers to flush out the salt water and those salt crystals. Don't leave your boat unattended whilst you're doing this, because if the flushing attachment comes loose, then you won't have cooling to your engine and your engine could overheat and potentially do some serious damage. So that's the basics of flushing the engine. It's important to do that after every trip in the salt water and also in the fresh water, especially if you've been through some mud or some sand and there may be some silt through the cooling system. So I'll just switch the engine off quickly now. We'll go through some other flushing ports on the other side of the engine, and we'll briefly wrap up the flushing process. Sometimes it's not practical or viable to run your engine, so if you're coming home from a fishing trip late at night or early in the morning, you can't always run your engine. And some of these modern day outboard motors have a secondary flushing attachment or a flushing port, like on this Honda. We have one up here. This is not as efficient as drawing the water through your cooling system, because you're not getting your thermostat open and your thermostat working. However, this is a good second alternative if you can't run your engine. So we usually grab the hose, you just connect the hose to this flushing attachment, run the hose and allow the water pressure to circulate water through the cooling system. A good alternative if you can't run your engine at night. Also on some of these smaller engines, they have a smaller gear case. They sometimes have tricky little flushing inlet ports. And what you can do if you can't get a set of earmuffs over those is you can just stick them in a large bin or a bucket or even a canvas flush bag. You fill the bucket up with water, lower the engine into the water, start the engine, and it'll draw water through the cooling system and circulate the water through the cooling system appropriately. So that's an introduction to flushing your engine. It's important to do so after every trip in the salt water, and I do it after every trip in the fresh water as well, just to get into a pattern, into a routine, and that will ensure that your cooling system is flushed. You don't have salt crystals or grit in your cooling system, and hopefully ensure smooth running of your outboard for a long time.